TTLS on 212, we're ready to go.
All right, very good. And launch director, with that cleanup, we're going to go ahead and proceed.
Yes, sir, please do.
All right, and all personnel, we are going to pick up the clock here momentarily. And GLS, you can resume the clock on your mark.
Copy that. Countdown clock will resume on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark.
T-minus.
Go for auto sequence start.
Handoff to Atlantis' computers has occurred. Solid rocket booster nozzle steering check and work.
20.
Firing chain is armed.
15.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. The final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Program, Houston.
Roger, roll, Atlantis. Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history. 24 seconds into the flight, roll program complete. Atlantis now heads down, wings level on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Space Station. 40 seconds into the flight, the three liquid fuel main engines throttling back to 72% of rated performance in the bucket, reducing stress on the shuttle as it goes transonic for the final time. Engines now revving up, standing by for the throttle up call.
Atlantis, go at throttle up, no action, DPDT.
Go with throttle up, no action on DPDT.
That call from Capcom Barry Wilmore, a transducer, instrumentation only, no action required. Atlantis now 15 miles in altitude, already 16 miles downrange from the Kennedy Space Center, 1 minute 40 seconds into the flight. Atlantis flexing its muscles one final time. Atlantis traveling almost 2,600 miles an hour, 21 miles in altitude, 24 miles downrange, standing by for solid rocket booster separation. Booster officer confirms staging a good solid rocket booster separation. Guidance now converging. The main engine steering the shuttle on a pinpoint path to its preliminary orbit. 2 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Atlantis already traveling 3,200 miles an hour, 35 miles in altitude, 50 miles downrange. The propulsion officer reports the orbital maneuvering system engines have ignited. Atlantis kicking on its afterburners for 1 minute, 23 seconds for the final phase of powered flight.
Atlantis, 2-engine towel.
failure. However, Atlantis' 3 engines performing perfectly. 4 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight. Atlantis currently traveling 5,500 miles an hour, 62 miles in altitude, almost 200 miles downrange. 4 minutes of powered flight remaining. Atlantis speeding straight as an arrow toward its date with the International Space Station Sunday morning. Coming up on the 5-minute mark. Atlantis now traveling 6,500 miles an hour, 66 miles in altitude, 250 miles downrange.
Atlantis, press to ATO.
Press to ATO.
That call indicating we can make minimal orbital targets in the event of an engine failure. All 3 engines continue to function normally. Atlantis will begin its slow roll to a heads-up position shortly. Five and a half minutes into the flight. Atlantis traveling 7,700 miles an hour, 315 miles downrange.
Atlantis, single engine, ops 3.
Single engine ops 3.
And the guidance officer here in Mission Control confirms that the computers are commanding the main engines to swivel.
Engine Zaragoza, 104.
Single engine Zaragoza 104.
We've rolled to a heads-up position now, providing better communications to the tracking and data relay satellite system as Atlantis heads uphill. 6 minutes, 20 seconds into the flight.
Atlantis, press to MECO.
Press to MECO.
That call indicates that we can make our normal orbital cutoff targets in the event of an engine failure. However, all 3 main engines continue to function normally.
Nominal. Fergie, go the plus X, go the pitch.
Nominal shutdown plan. Go for the plus X, go for the pitch.
That call indicating that we will be in good shape for the orientation of Atlantis for external tank photography following main engine cutoff. Now 7 minutes into the flight. One minute, 20 seconds till main engine cutoff. Atlantis traveling 12,000 miles an hour. The main engines will soon be throttling down once again to limit the stress on the shuttle and its 4 crew members to that of 3 times the effective gravity. Atlantis currently traveling at a speed of more than 4 miles a second. 1 minute of powered flight remaining for Atlantis. Three good main engines, 3 good auxiliary power units, 3 good fuel cells. Approaching the 8-minute mark into the flight. Atlantis now traveling more than 15,000 miles an hour. Eight minutes, 15 seconds into the flight, standing by for main engine cutoff. That'll be followed a few seconds later by the separation of the external fuel tank. Booster officer confirms main engine cutoff. For the last time, the Space Shuttle's main engines have fallen silent as the shuttle slips into the final chapter of a storied 30-year adventure. Now standing by for external tank separation. Atlantis off the tank. Commander Chris Ferguson will be maneuvering Atlantis now into an orientation to enable Sandy Magnus to capture digital still imagery of the external fuel tank as it drifts away.
So OMS 1 is not required. Your preliminary OMS 2 TIG 37 minutes.
37 minutes, no ohms 1 required, thanks.
This is Mission Control Houston. Atlantis safely in its preliminary orbit. Following a flawless launch from the Kennedy Space Center, albeit about 2.5 minutes late at 10:29 a.m. Central Time. The launch slightly delayed while engineers at the Kennedy Space Center confirmed the complete retraction of the gaseous vent arm at the launch pad. Commander Chris Ferguson is currently orienting Atlantis into the proper attitude to enable Sandy Magnus to capture digital still imagery of the external fuel tank as it drifts away for the final time. Atlantis currently in an orbit of 140 by 36 statute miles. That's the preliminary orbit that will be increased in altitude at its apogee through the firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines 26 minutes from now.
Houston, Atlantis, you ready for MTS TVC ISO?
That's affirmative, Chunky. We are ready. Chunky, also, after you get those closed, we'll be ready for APU hide shutdown. On 3-4, the only delta is tail-only control is not required. And when you get ready for Ops 105, we are ready as well.
We copy all. APU hide shutdown. On 3-4, except tail-only control not required, and we're ready for 105.
That's a good readback.
This is Mission Control Houston here in the shuttle flight control room. Post-insertion activities underway under the direction of Ascent Flight Director Richard Jones, second from your right, who presided over all of the work that was done associated with making sure that the weather was acceptable for launch from a return to launch site abort standpoint for the Spaceflight Meteorology Group. On the far right, Flight Director Tony Sacacci, he will preside over Atlantis' final entry 12 days from now. Butch Wilmore, Barry Wilmore, the Capcom, the spacecraft's communicator, in the dark shirt, and on the far left, Lee Archambault, the astronaut who was in direct contact with Deputy Chief Astronaut Rick Sturckow. Sturckow was assessing the weather and real-time observations as he flew the shuttle training aircraft around the vicinity of the Kennedy Space Center in the final hours prior to launch. Handshakes all around here in the shuttle flight control room. As we move into the post-insertion time frame, the initial phase of getting Atlantis set up for orbital operations, the countdown clocks here in Mission Control currently ticking backward to the first firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines in what is known as the OMS 2 burn, just a bit under 22 minutes from now. That will begin to raise the orbit, the apogee of Atlantis' orbit. Essentially, the launch itself was the first rendezvous maneuver to catch up to the International Space Station for a docking on Sunday morning. With Atlantis in the early minutes of its final flight, and the final flight in the history of the shuttle program, we're going to go back down now to the Kennedy Space Center at the launch site for replays of today's launch that occurred at 10:29 a.m. Central Time.
TIG of 37:45, we like that, and no deltas, the 3-6 or 3-7.
3-5 and subsequent in work.
Thanks, Atlantis. We're watching.
Hey, Houston, just to tag up with you, we show ourselves complete through the MPS power down, just waiting on your go when the time comes.
Okay, we are ready for MPS power down when on time, and if you could check the MPS pneumatic helium isol to GPC, that should get them.
Okay, pneumatic helium isol to GPC. Thanks for the check.
As we watch the replays of Atlantis' final launch, Capcom Barry Wilmore talking to Commander Chris Ferguson on board Atlantis. The main propulsion system has been shut down. The external tank umbilical doors have closed. The auxiliary power units have been shut down. Everything going well. Less than 22 minutes following Atlantis' launch. The crew on board Atlantis will be busy over the course of the next several hours setting up shop on board the orbiter, activating payload buses, breaking out laptop computers, preparing for the opening of the payload bay doors, after which the ascent team of flight controllers will assess all of Atlantis' systems for a go for on-orbit operations. A slightly longer workday than usual for the crew of Atlantis, since there are only 4 crew members on board instead of the usual 6 or 7. Later in the day, the checkout of the shuttle's robotic arm, along with other activities preparatory to the inspection that will take place of Atlantis' thermal protection system tomorrow, standard customary operations for the second day of any shuttle flight.
Houston, Atlantis, MPS power down is complete, and with that, we would like to thank the Pratt & Whitney Rocketdyne team and the SSME team for their flawless performance over this 30-year shuttle flight history. 135 flights, It's a 7,000-pound engine that puts out 1.5 million pounds of thrust, and they pitch the equivalent of a perfect game every flight. From everyone who's ridden on these rockets, we thank you.
We concur with that assessment, Atlantis. Good and pertinent and true words.
We're putting ET umbilical door closure in work, but
Mechanical Systems Officer here in Mission Control watching over the closing of the external tank umbilical doors. Words of compliment from pilot Doug Hurley for all of the propulsion system engineers who presided over 135 flights of the Space Shuttle, and the performance of Space Shuttle main engines, the external fuel tank, the solid rocket boosters that propelled these vehicles, and hundreds of humans to orbit. The external tank umbilical doors now closed and latched, confirmed by the Mechanical Systems Officer here in Mission Control. Atlantis soon to maneuver into the correct orientation for the firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines about 9 minutes from now, the OMS 2 burn that will help to refine Atlantis's altitude as it now begins its trek to catch up to and dock with the International Space Station on Sunday.
Hey, Houston, we're ready for the maneuver if you are.
Affirmative, Atlantis, we are ready.
Atlantis now beginning to maneuver into the correct orientation for the firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines 7.5 minutes from now. This will be a firing of both orbital maneuvering system engines at the rear of the shuttle that flank the vertical tail fin. The firing of this OMS 2 burn, as it is called, about 1 minute 4 seconds in duration. This is Mission Control Houston, less than 2 minutes away from the orbital maneuvering system burn to increase Atlantis' altitude. This will be a 1 minute 4 second firing of both orbital maneuvering system engines. The guidance, navigation, and control officer reports Atlantis is in a good configuration for the burn, as does the propulsion officer here in Mission Control.
Houston, we think we're in a good config for the burn.
That's affirmative, Atlantis. We show you in a good config for the OMS 2 burn.
Standing by for the firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines. And the propulsion officer reports that the OMS 2 burn is underway.
We see a good burn, Atlantis. No further trim is required. We'll meet you in the post-OMS 2 tab.
Copy and concur. Thanks, Houston.
And as we watch the replay of Atlantis separating from its external fuel tank following its launch almost 40 minutes ago, the confirmation from Capcom Barry Wilmore here in Mission Control to Commander Chris Ferguson that we've had a good firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines, the OMS 2 burn helping to refine Atlantis' altitude as it begins its trek on the road for its 2-day chase to catch up to the International Space Station. Atlantis now at an altitude of 143 by 98 statute miles.
Here comes the gimbal check, Houston.
We are watching. And Chunky, no deltas to your post-burn reconfig.
Copy, no delta.
This is Mission Control Houston, now back here at the Johnson Space Center. The ascent team of flight controllers on duty, led by Flight Director Richard Jones, along with spacecraft communicator Barry Wilmore, following the launch of Atlantis 42 minutes ago, following a very, very slight delay while the ground launch sequencer at the Kennedy Space Center verified that the gaseous vent arm, the beanie cap, if you will, was fully retracted from the top of the orbiter's external fuel tank. With the launch having been completed, the first maneuver, the first major maneuver of the flight, the OMS 2 burn of the orbital maneuvering system engines, has just been accomplished. Atlantis now flying at an altitude of 143 by 97 statute miles in pursuit of the International Space Station, flying from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator.
On 5-3 if you're ready.
Affirmative, we are ready for 106, Fergie.
Houston, contact from the mid-deck. How do you copy?
Sandy, we have you loud and clear. How us?
Very good. I have you loud and clear as well.
Yeah, it's good talking to you, Sandy.
Mission Specialist Sandy Magnus now out of her seat on the flight deck, having made her way down to the mid-deck to begin the preliminary configuration of the systems down there. In the meantime, Rex Walheim will be working to begin the configuration of the aft flight deck hardware. Commander Chris Ferguson and pilot Doug Hurley will be checking out the shuttle's robotic arm, unfurling it from the port sill of the shuttle's payload bay at about the 6.5-hour mark into the mission, performing a checkout of its systems before it is used tomorrow to grapple the orbiter boom sensor system for the initial inspection of Atlantis' thermal protection system.
Hey, Houston, we show ourselves complete with the ascent checklist. If you agree, we'll meet you in post-insertion.
We do agree with that, Atlantis. And while I got you, Fergie, if you'd like to set up a timer for your NC1 TIG, it's at 3:39.
3 hours, 39 minutes. We appreciate that. Thanks.
You bet.
Here in the Space Shuttle Flight Control Room, the ascent team looking over the shoulders of Atlantis' quartet as they begin to set up shop for at least a dozen days of on-orbit operations. For those keeping track, the exact liftoff time for Atlantis on its final mission was 10:29 and 3.9 seconds Central Time, 10:29 and 3.9 seconds Central Time today. Just about 2 minutes and change behind schedule, while the Kennedy Space Center held the countdown clock at the T-minus 31-second mark, just before the ground launch sequencer would do the handoff to the shuttle's onboard computers to verify the full retraction of the beanie cap, or the gaseous vent arm, that is located at the top of the shuttle's external fuel tank.
Hey, Houston, we're ready for Block 1. Any deltas?
Good question, Fergie. There are no deltas. As you recall, though, we will be going single G2.
Absolutely. Single G2, no deltas, and here we go.
We are watching.
Houston, it's step 1. If you like the INBAT, we'll give you the Ops 106.
Yes, we do like your INBAT, Atlantis.
And as Atlantis' 4 astronauts continue to set up shop, configuring their data processing system for on-orbit operations that will set the stage for the opening of the payload bay doors about 35 minutes from now. Atlantis is currently flying over the southern Indian Ocean, about to swing south of the continent of Australia and back out over the Pacific Ocean. While most of the activity was centered around the launch of Atlantis in the shuttle flight control room down the hall from here in the International Space Station flight control room, the team of flight controllers on console watching over the activities of the Expedition 28 crew, led today by Flight Director Emily Nelson. On the right of your screen, Robert Hanley is the spacecraft communicator talking directly to the half-dozen crew members on board the station. They were watching the launch on a television feed uplinked to them as they watched Atlantis begin its journey to link up to the International Space Station for the final time on Sunday morning at the outset of the delivery of some 4 tons of equipment and supplies that will fortify the station over the next 12 months. Of course, the station is led by Commander Andrei Botasenko, along with Russian crewmates Alexander Samakutyaev and Sergei Volkov, Satoshi Furukawa from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, and NASA astronauts Ron Garan and Mike Fossum.
Hey, Houston, in Step 4, if you like the MBAT, we've double-checked it. We like it. We're ready for Ops 201.
We do like the NBAT and are ready for Ops 201.
This is Mission Control Houston, almost 1 hour into Atlantis' final flight. The 4 crew members setting up all of their equipment, setting up their data processing system as they convert the onboard software from the ascent load to the on-orbit load. About 30 minutes or so from now, 35 minutes perhaps, we'll get into the time frame for the opening of the payload bay doors and the activation of the radiators to take over from the flash evaporator system that was initiated about 5 minutes or so into the flight to provide cooling for the shuttle's electronics and avionics. The flash evaporator system provides temporary cooling during ascent and entry. Otherwise, the radiators dissipate heat once the payload bay doors are open and the radiators are deployed. Following its launch at 10:29 Central Time this morning, Atlantis settled into its preliminary orbit. That was followed about 30 or so minutes later by the firing of the orbital maneuvering system engines in the first altitude adjustment burn, essentially to raise the apogee of Atlantis's orbit as it began its two-day trek to catch up to and dock with the International Space Station for the start of almost 8 days of joint docked operations with the 6 crew members on board the orbital outpost.
Hey, Houston, Block 1, Step 6, we double-checked that in-bat as well. We're ready for SM Ops 201.
Ready for that, Atlantis. Thanks for the heads up.
One programming note, at noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we'll be going back down to the Kennedy Space Center for the post-launch news conference. The participants will be NASA Associate Administrator for Space Operations Bill Gerstenmaier, Bob Cabana, the Director of the Kennedy Space Center, Mike Moses, who's the Space Shuttle Program Launch Integration Manager and Chairman of the Pre-Mission Mission Management Team, and the Shuttle Launch Director, Mike Leinbach. Again, the post-launch news conference is targeted for noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time from the Kennedy Space Center, and we'll be going back down there for that. That should be close to the time frame that will be initiating the opening of the payload bay doors, but we'll keep you posted on mission audio once NASA television has gone back down to the Kennedy Space Center. Everything going very smoothly, the crew working ahead of schedule in its post-insertion timeline, beginning to set up all of the systems that it will use aboard the orbiter for the next 12 days.
Houston, Block 2 complete.
Block 2 complete. Thank you.
Houston, Atlantis, ComCheck, Flight Deck Handle Mike.
We have you loud and clear, Rex. It's good to hear your voice.
Great to hear you, Butch. It's great to be back in space.
No doubt. Hey, while I've got you real quick, I have no deltas to your payload bay door opening attitude.
Okay, copy, Butch, thanks.
Yeah, that's on 1-5 when you get there.
Houston, step 10, ready for the LROG resets.
Affirmative, we will take that, Atlantis.
Here in the flight control room, standing is Paul Hill, the Director of Mission Operations here at the Johnson Space Center, talking with the ground controllers who basically take care of all of the building's functions, anything from air conditioning to the computer systems to the scheduling of time on the tracking and data relay satellite system. He has been going around the room congratulating the flight control team here, as I'm suspecting he will over the course of the next 12 days or so, from time to time with all the shifts in both the shuttle and station flight control rooms as the shuttle program enters its final 2 weeks of a 30-year program. Once again, we'll be switching to the Kennedy Space Center at the top of the hour for the post-launch news conference targeted for noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time.
I think we're done with Block 1.
Copy, we agree, done with Block 1.
While the crew of Atlantis continues to configure its spaceship for on-orbit operations and the opening of the payload bay doors a short time from now, that post-launch news conference coming up at the top of the hour from the Kennedy Space Center will feature Bill Gerstenmaier, the NASA Associate Administrator for Space Operations, Bob Cabana, the Director of the Kennedy Space Center, Mike Moses, the Space Shuttle Program Launch Integration Manager, and Mike Leinbach, the Shuttle Launch Director. Again, the post-launch news conference coming up at the top of the hour at noon Central Time, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Atlantis launched from Launch Pad 39A in the final launch in Space Shuttle program history 1 hour, 10 minutes ago, flawlessly reaching orbit, conducting an orbital maneuvering system burn about 37 minutes into the flight to increase its altitude. The shuttle currently flying at an altitude of 141 by 97 statute miles over the South Pacific, about to begin a southwest and northeasterly trek that will carry it across the equator and the beginning of the second orbit of the mission. Once the payload bay doors are open and the mechanical systems officer confirms that has been completed, the crew will wait for a go for on-orbit operations.
The attitude we loaded, we'll give you the maneuver.
Ready for the maneuver.
The maneuver reported by Commander Chris Ferguson and acknowledged by Capcom Barry Wilmore on the left here in the shuttle flight control room is the maneuver to the payload bay door opening attitude. The payload bay doors will be opened. The radiators will be deployed to provide cooling for the orbiter's avionics and electronics until they are closed on landing day. Again, Flight Director Richard Jones will first go around the room to get a go for payload bay door opening. Once the doors are open, then he will take a poll of the ascent team of flight controllers to get a go for on-orbit operations, after which the crew will be out of its post-insertion checklist and into the timeline that will see Chris Ferguson and Rex Walheim set up a variety of laptop computers on the orbiter before Ferguson and Hurley begin to work from the aft flight deck of Atlantis to activate, unfurl, and check out the shuttle's robotic arm, maneuvering it from its sill on the port side of the payload bay in advance of the grappling of the orbiter boom sensor system tomorrow on flight day 2 and the checkout and inspection of the thermal protection system, starting with the starboard wing of Atlantis to make sure that the reinforced carbon-carbon did not suffer any damage during Atlantis' climb uphill. The orbiter boom sensor system, using a variety of laser cameras and sensors, will inspect the orbiter's nose and then move over to the port wing. All of that data, coupled with the ascent imagery, And the rendezvous pitch maneuver that Atlantis will do during its final approach for docking on Sunday to the International Space Station will be analyzed by the debris analysis team here at the Johnson Space Center as they begin the process of incrementally clearing the shuttle for its final entry back to Earth and a landing at least 12 days from now.
We copy.
And Flight Director Richard Jones now polling his team to get a go for payload bay door opening.
Atlantis, you are go for payload bay door opening.
Awesome news, Houston. Thanks. Go for payload bay doors. Hey, Houston, how long to Estel?
Yeah, just shy of 16 minutes.
Great news, thanks.
This is Mission Control Houston with approval having been given to the crew of Atlantis to open the payload bay doors. Commander Chris Ferguson querying the flight control team about how long it will take.
Atlantis, we assured that you probably know this, but just to make sure we're tagged up, you will be auto mode on the payload bay door opening.
Auto mode on the doors, thank you.
The reference to how much time until Estel refers to an FM ground station that is located here at the Johnson Space Center, through which some downlink TV may be available. Typically, about one orbit into the flight, we will get a couple of minutes of television around the time of payload bay door opening, so we'll see how that goes. The payload bay doors will be operated for their opening by Mission Specialist Rex Walheim, backed up by Commander Chris Ferguson.
Hey, you have sync config?
That is affirmative, Atlantis.
Copy.
One of the other big ticket items for Atlantis' crew will be the deployment of the dish-shaped KU band antenna over the starboard forward sill of the payload bay.
We missed anything?
Okay, we'll take a look.
Chris Ferguson asking Capcom Barry Wilmore to make sure that the team here is looking over their shoulders to make sure they don't miss anything in the post-insertion checklist. Again, the KU band antenna will be deployed soon. Once the payload bay doors are open, that will enable a high data rate telemetry and downlink television capability from the shuttle.
Atlantis Block 3 does look good to us. Nice work.
The electrical systems officer here in Mission Control reports that the crew has begun the process of turning on the lights in the payload bay. That in advance of the operation of the systems by Rex Walheim and Chris Ferguson to actually open the doors, deploy the radiators, and setting the stage for a go for on-orbit operations. Atlantis crossing the Pacific at an altitude of 143 by 97 statute miles. Soon to cross the equator, moving from southwest to northeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator.
Block 5 complete, Houston.
We copy. Block 5 complete. Thanks for keeping us tied in.
And Block 4's in work.
4 in work.
Hey, we'll plan to go open on the doors at, let me see, an MET of about 131. Does that sound about right, Houston?
That's affirmative. 131 will be right at the beginning of the Estel window.
This is Mission Control Houston. The crew aboard Atlantis is preparing to open the payload bay doors and deploy the radiators on the orbiter to provide cooling for the shuttle's avionics and electronics for the duration of the mission until entry day. We're expecting to receive some downlink television as the crew begins that procedure about 5 minutes from now. So thanks to the Kennedy Space Center, they'll be delaying the start of their post-launch news conference by just 10 minutes. That will start now at around 12:10 p.m. Central Time, 1:10 p.m. Eastern Time. Bill Gerstenmaier, NASA's Associate Administrator for Space Operations out of NASA headquarters, Bob Cabana, the Director of the Kennedy Space Center, Mike Moses, the Space Shuttle Launch Integration Manager, and Mike Leinbach, the Shuttle Launch Director, will be the participants in the news conference at the Kennedy Space Center, which now will begin at about 12:10 p.m. Central Time, allowing us to bring to you at least the beginning of the payload bay door opening aboard Atlantis.
Houston, Block 6 is complete, and we'll pick up with the open command for the doors about 31 minutes after.
Okay, we copy Block 6, and we'll be standing by for the doors. Atlantis, I do have a switch throw in R11 when you got somebody there, R11 lower.
Go ahead.
Supply water galley supply valve to open, talk back open. Thank you very much.
And the mechanical systems officer reports here in Mission Control that the latches are beginning to disengage for the opening of the payload bay doors. We're expecting and hoping for some television through the FM ground station here at the Johnson Space Center of that operation. Again, payload bay door opening in work. Waiting to lock up on this ground station that is called Estel here.
Great view on Estel, Atlantis.
I love it when a plan comes together.
Amen.
The door's in the process of swinging open. The starboard door, as you can see, is already open. The port door to follow. You're looking right down at the front end of the Raffaello multipurpose logistics module, carrying some 8,000 pounds of logistics supplies to fortify the International Space Station for the next year. On the far right, nestled against the payload bay door, is the shuttle's robotic arm that will be unfurled and tested within the next few hours by Commander Chris Ferguson and pilot Doug Hurley in advance of its grappling of the orbiter boom sensor system for the initial inspection of the shuttle's thermal protection system tomorrow. Now the port door begins to swing open. In this split screen image on the left is the shuttle's KU band communications antenna, which also will be deployed a short time from now. And the mechanical systems officer reports the payload bay doors have been opened for the final time on Atlantis. Here in the flight control room, Flight Director Richard Jones now polling his team to get a go for on-orbit operations.
Atlantis, we just polled the room, and you are go for orbit ops.
Go for orbit ops. Great news, Houston. Thanks.
So with that, the crew will begin the process of doffing their launch and entry suits, and we'll press ahead now for the deployment of the KU band communications antenna and the setup of the laptop computers on board the orbiter. Also on tap, the activation of the star trackers, the stowage of the escape pole, and other items that will clear the path for the rest of the day's activities that will culminate in the crew going to sleep around 7 p.m. Central Time tonight. We'll be switching the NASA television satellite back down to the Kennedy Space Center shortly for the start of the post-launch news conference in about 5 minutes at 12:10 Central Time, 1:10 Eastern Time. Once again, Bill Gerstenmaier, the NASA Associate Administrator for Space Operations, will be participating in that news conference, joined by the director of the Kennedy Space Center, Bob Cabana, Mike Moses, the Shuttle Launch Integration Manager, and Mike Leinbach, the Shuttle Launch Director. Again, Atlantis' payload bay doors now open, a go for on-orbit operations issued by Flight Director Richard Jones, everything going swimmingly in the early phase of Atlantis' final flight into space.
With today's final launch of the Space Shuttle, we turn the page on a remarkable period of America's history in space. while beginning the next chapter in our nation's extraordinary story of exploration. From the early exploits of Daniel Boone, Lewis and Clark, and Robert Peary, to the breakthrough journeys of Alan Shepard and John Glenn, Americans have always been a curious people, bold enough to imagine new worlds, ingenious enough to chart a course to them, and courageous enough to go for it. And the gifts of knowledge and innovation that we have brought back from the unknown have played their part in the building of our more perfect union. Some say that this final shuttle mission will mark the end of America's 50 years of dominance in human spaceflight. As a former astronaut and the current NASA administrator, I want to make clear that American leadership in space will continue for at least the next half century because we've laid the foundation for success. And for us at NASA, failure is not an option. Over 3 decades, the shuttle has brought this nation many firsts and many, many proud moments. It has helped the United States to maintain its leadership in space. It has vastly increased our knowledge about launch systems, which we'll apply to the next generation of space transportation. It opened the door to space for men and women of all races. It united our globe with communication satellites and helped us learn how to repair them in orbit. It launched science missions and brought the hundreds of research experiments to the International Space Station, which will be the centerpiece for our human spaceflight activities into the future. I know the transition from our flagship program to a new chapter in human spaceflight has not been easy. Change never is. I want to thank the NASA workforce for its dedication and professionalism. What you have accomplished continues to amaze the world, and we've only just begun. Tomorrow's destinations will inspire new generations of explorers, and the shuttle pioneers have made the next chapter of human spaceflight possible. President Obama is asking us to harness that American spirit of innovation, the drive to solve problems and create capabilities that is so embedded in our story and has led us to the moon, the great observatories, and to humans living and working in space. That American ingenuity is alive and well, and it will fire up our economy and help us win the future. Thank you, and Godspeed to Atlantis and her crew.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to a very joyous day, the STS-135 post-launch news conference after the successful launch of Space Shuttle Atlantis today before near-record crowds in the Space Coast area. I believe that we have 1,535 news media here in attendance, and it looks like we crammed as many of you folks in the room as we possibly could today. Thank you very much for coming. We would like to begin things with by introducing the members of our panel, and then we'll have opening comments, and then we'll be happy to take your questions. To my immediate left is Mr. Bill Gerstenmaier, NASA Associate Administrator for Space Operations.
Good afternoon.
Bob Cabana, Kennedy Space Center Director.
Hi.
Mike Moses, Space Shuttle Program Launch Integration Manager and the Chairman of the Pre-Launch Mission Management Team.
Good afternoon.
And Mike Leinbach, Space Shuttle Launch Director.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Mr. Gerstenmaier.
Thanks, Mike. What a truly awesome day today. We got to witness something really, really special and something really amazing. And you may think that sometimes I talk about the hardware, but I'm really talking about the teams and the people that supported that launch that just occurred. What you saw is the finest launch team and shuttle preparation teams in the world that got this vehicle ready to go fly. You got to see the team perform everything we've asked them to perform over these years. The vehicle had a tremendous launch. The teams worked flawlessly, even the last minute to hold at 31 seconds. They worked through that with tremendous professionalism and got this launch off today. So just congratulations to the KSC team. I can't thank you enough for everything you have done for us. Everything I've asked this team to do here at KSC, they have done, and they've done it superbly and beyond my highest expectations. So thank you to the KSC team. The JSC team and the ISS team, they've still got to get busy, as well as the crew on orbit. The docking will be on Sunday. It's a pretty busy mission. You'll see that activity on orbit that we're going to go through. We're going to try to extend the mission probably an extra day. They'll work that through the mission management team as things go on. But I urge you to follow the mission and watch what's going on with what is going on with ISS, and really take in and spend a little extra time to understand the research and the activities that are happening on ISS. And then we look forward to a landing here at KSC. So again, still a lot of work in front of us, but what an awesome and great start to the mission today. So again, thank you, and I look forward to your questions later. Bob?
Thanks, Bill. First off, I want to thank Bill Gerstenmaier for the leadership that he has provided human spaceflight from NASA headquarters. He truly has done an outstanding job. And John Shannon's not here today, but John, I can't think of a finer program manager for the shuttle program to close it out and see us get this last vehicle on orbit. And of course, last but not least, I want to thank the two Mikes here. I think they did a truly excellent job leading the team through this last launch, and we got a little dicey there a couple of times, but we found our way through it, and I'll let them talk about that. It truly was an awesome, spectacular launch. In my opinion, the only way it could have been better is if I'd have found a way to stow away on there somewhere, but unfortunately that didn't work out. I want to share with you what I shared with the launch team after the launch, and Bill kind of said it, but words can't express the gratitude I have for this team and the pride that I have in them. They are truly the most professional, the best, most outstanding technicians and engineers anywhere. And we owe them a great debt of thanks. They have just done a truly outstanding job in service to our country, and they've provided us with one heck of a ride for the last 30 years on the United States Shuttle program. And they really need recognition. We're going to be going through a tough time. Change is hard, and we're going to have more folks walking out the door here in a few weeks. And, they were and are performing their job absolutely flawlessly right up to the end, and that says a lot for them. It speaks to that professionalism. Change is difficult, but you can't do something else, you can't do something better unless you go through change. And all this talk about, NASA's adrift, we don't have a plan. We do have a plan. We're enabling commercial space. We have the Commercial Crew Program here at Kennedy, supported by the Johnson Space Center in Houston. We have 4 folks under contract trying to build a vehicle that will take Americans to space, supporting our International Space Station that's still up there until at least 2020 with Americans on board, a human spaceflight program. And yes, we have to rely on rides on Russian rockets for a while, but we're implementing those plans to get a commercial U.S. capability to get our folks there. And we're working very hard on a heavy lift program that will allow us, again, to explore beyond our home planet. If you look out to Pad B, you see a shuttle structure on Pad A, but let me tell you, Pad B is in a lot better shape than that shuttle structure. And even though you see stuff coming down on the top of the pad, what you don't see is what's inside. All new fiber optics, all new digital control systems, a new lightning protection system that even helped us clear the shuttle down on Pad A for the lightning strikes that we've had. State of the art. So a lot of progress is being made to prepare for this multi-user capability at KSC, a multi-user launch complex where we can have a heavy lift program that allows us to explore, and commercial programs also. We announced the MPCV as Orion to go on that big rocket. That hardware starts arriving here at the Cape later this year for the first test article. Soon we'll have an announcement on the exact architecture of the rocket to go along with that. And so we are making progress. We're doing all that we need to do to help move us forward. So, the shuttle program has been truly phenomenal, and I take great pride in this team and thank them for all they've done. We still got a lot to do before it's over, and they're going to be doing a lot of work on orbit, and then we're going to bring them home safe, and I'm looking forward to that landing back here at the Cape and shaking their hands after a great mission. So to all of you, thanks for your support, and we are going to get through this, and we're going to do well. But awesome launch today. Mike?
Thanks, Bob. Let's see. After years of training to tell me to do things in the right order, I'll do something in the wrong order here. I'm going to start out my remarks by telling you Mike tells you a lot, that he leads the best launch team in the world, and I'll include that the Ascent team back in Houston, and they are truly the best. It is an honor and a privilege to serve with you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate
the judgment they showed today, the leadership they showed today was absolutely amazing. So let me get back on track before I lose it. I'll talk about technical stuff, right? Because I'm good at that. So you saw these guys really perform. You know, it started yesterday. I don't even know what time I was getting ready to take a nap, and they called up and said we took a lightning strike pretty much on the pad, and the team had that cleared within about 4 hours. We knew we were good to go, press on with the count. We still had to do some data review, still had to dot some I's and cross some T's. Echoed that to about 2 years ago when I first, 2.5 years ago when I first started, we had a lightning strike about that same time frame, made us delay 24 hours. Play that back about 2 years before that, we had a lightning strike that made us delay about 2 days. So it really shows you how well the team takes the challenge of recognizing that there's something we're not quite the best at, and we'll go become the best at it. And we really showed that with the lightning strike clearing. The decision to go tank today, in face of that weather forecast with the odds we had against us all day and for the weekend, I thought was unbelievable leadership as well to take us down that path and let us try today, and it really did pay off. Mike's team worked a couple of good technical issues, a LOX pump acting up a little bit, and then just to make it really exciting, at 31 seconds, the Gox vent arm. I'll let Mike tell you about, again, that was a great example of how well the team had prepared ahead of time. And then we just worked that weather all day long, and we ended up coming right down to the wire. The range weather hung right in there, was pretty good all day long. We really had the advantage of having the weather recon aircraft up there to go slice up the clouds to truly find out how thick they were, where they really were, look at where showers were popping up and not. And when it came right down to it, we end up right up against our RTLS rain shower rule, which says we don't want rain showers within 20 nautical miles of the landing site, the SLF, the shuttle landing facility. And on this day, we had a few showers that were still popping up in that circle. So we were, at the time, needing to go. We were observed no-go at the landing site. But that's okay, because RTLS landing wouldn't be for about 35 minutes after launch. But we were also going to be forecast no-go. And that's where we needed to talk about maybe taking a little bit of an exception today beyond what's printed in the rules to say we understand the situation a little better, because this situation is not one that we wrote down ahead of time. And that's what we did. The team did a very thorough evaluation. The Ascent team, led by Richard Jones back in Houston, and our weather recon aircraft with CJ Storkow flying, and all the team that supports them, did an amazing job of really talking about what conditions we were truly facing. We knew we had some showers that might pop up, but they would be limited in scope to only affect one end of the runway. We had good energy profiles that would let us land on either end of the runway, so we could redesignate around a rain shower if it did pop up. Really, when you're flying through rain showers, you're worried about losing a lot of your energy, and we knew through calculations that even if we had that, we had an excess margin that would be okay even if we did happen to catch a rain shower at the bad time. But really what made us go today was the radar forecasts, the radar maps, the forecasts, and the observations by the STA pilot that showed there was really nothing developing down in the quadrant that would then blow up over the pad. So we knew we might have a tiny risk of a chance of a shower. We knew very well it was not going to be a thunderstorm, and that allowed us to be comfortable today to just go a little bit beyond the printed rule and take that extra exception at the end and go ahead and launch today. Proved out, I kept an eye on the radar map as we were flying uphill all the way through RTLS landing time. There never was a shower that popped up in the circle, and it was a really good decision by the team today. Had no problem endorsing that one. On the way uphill, we got a DPDT alarm, which is a delta pressure over delta time, basically a change in pressure. The cabin pressure dropped off just a tiny little bit. We attribute that to cabin stretch. If you think about it, as we're lifting up through, the cabin grows a little bit because of all the G-forces on it, and it just vents off a little bit of oxygen. Pressure was very stable after that little bit flip, so no worries. But it did ring an alarm on the way uphill to give the crew yet more excitement on this last mission. They got in orbit. MECO was right on target. OMS 2 was perfect, and they're doing a really good job. The doors are open now, and we're really looking forward to a great mission. As Bill said, this is a very critical mission for station resupply. We're going to do our best to try to stretch out an extra day to help get some stowage on station cleaned up and in good shape. And this is really going to posture the space station to be done for the future. So I think the shuttle program is ending exactly as it should. We built the International Space Station. We're stocking it up for the future and ready to hand it off, and we finished really strong. That said, we're not ready to look back or forward. We still have this mission to complete, so we're going to stay very focused on the mission at hand. A 12, hopefully 13-day mission in front of us that's going to be jam-packed, and we're handing off to the team over in Houston to get that executed. So with that, I'll hand it over to Mike and just say I can't express again how proud I am to be sitting up here after a good, successful launch today.
Good. Thanks, Mike. Well, thanks for those opening remarks. That was very nice. And on behalf of the KSC Shuttle launch team, I accept those remarks. Very nice. Mike talked about the decision to go tank today, and he made it sound like it was a tough decision. Let me tell you how that really came down. We met in my office before the MMT meeting, and we flipped a coin. That's how we really make decisions. No.
It's got a big dartboard.
There's a big dartboard. Now that the program's over, we can divulge some of our secrets. We met before the meeting. We went over some strategy, and then the forecast was such that we had a decent shot at it. And as we've said before, we've tanked with worse predictions than that. And so we went with it today, and we got lucky. I mean, we got lucky is the way you can put it. From a launch weather perspective, Kathy Winters, our launch weather officer, did an outstanding job, and the folks that preceded her on console, Joel Tumbiolo and Mike McAleen, outstanding job today, guys. Thank you very much. The forecast for the launch perspective was right on the money, and we got that little bit of clearing that we needed. And so from my perspective on the launch side, it was pretty easy. Richard Jones, on the other hand, the flight director, wrestling with the RTLS, that was a bit more challenging for him, and he worked his way through that, and it was just an outstanding job. So we got through all that, and the tanking went fine. We had a little bit of an issue with our LOX pump, the major pump that puts the liquid oxygen into the external tank. We're getting a little bit of a chill down on that pump, indicative of a very minor leak, and so we opted to sort of voluntarily switch to the other pump before we got into trouble on that one. That went per the book. Never uncovered the eco sensors or the depletion sensors in the tank at all, and so we were good there too. And so the LOX guys did a great job. Coming on down to the count, I thought we were in the clear until 31 seconds when the Cox vent arm gave us a little bit of trouble. And all that was, folks, was when we retracted the GVA, we didn't get one of the indicators that it was back and locked, and we have procedures in place to go verify visually that it's back. And indeed it was, and there's enough hydraulic pressure in that system that we were not concerned at all with the GVA coming back out during main engine ignition, so no issue there. Team worked through it very, very well. I think we launched with 58 seconds left in the window this time, which is an eternity lately, and so that worked out really well for us. And just on behalf of the launch team and all the thousands of people here at KSC, I'm just very, very proud that we finished as strong from a launch perspective as we did. Again, the mission ahead of us, landing ahead of us, and then we'll be able to look back and celebrate. Today was a great day. And there's a party in the VAB, so I hope you don't ask too many questions. And so with that, Mike.
Yeah, that said, go ahead, Bob. I was just one real quick before we take questions. I think you all know Rick Sturko, a Marine, was flying the weather aircraft, and I was listening on the loop. And instead of using really technical meteorological terms, he put it in Marine terms, like I am, so that we could all understand. He said it's a really, really big hole.
All right, we will take questions. These gentlemen have been working since around midnight, and their day is not done, so we do want to let them get out of here by 2 o'clock at the latest. So we have about 30 minutes worth of questions, unless they nudge me and say they have to go sooner. To try to make sure everybody gets covered, please ask one question and a follow-up. Please make sure you wait for the microphone. Tell us your name and affiliation and to whom you're addressing your question. And we'll start in the front row with Seth Bornstein.
Seth Bornstein, AP, from Mike Leinbach. Can you describe sort of the mood after launch, in the launch control? Did it take longer for people to file out since it, it was the last one? Or how was it different than after other launches? Can you just describe what was going on there?
Yeah, you hit on it very good, Seth. It did take a while to leave the control room. We had photographers set up to take some pictures of the team, the entire team at once, and then individually or group pictures, whatever we chose to do. A lot of us walked around and shook everybody's hand. It seemed like we didn't want to leave. It was like the end of a party, and you just don't want to go. You just want to hang around a little bit longer and relish our friends and what we've accomplished. So it was very special. A lot of pats on the back today.
And just to follow up, either Mike, you talked about all the tiny technical problems you overcame. In the end, are you kind of glad that it was, instead of a completely clean count, which I know is easier, is it more sweet that you had to overcome all these things and yet still launch, or would you have just assumed had a nice, easier, cleaner count for you?
anytime we get to a T0 and we get to orbit safely is good by me. So it was fine. It challenged the team a little bit at the end, but we've practiced that scenario numerous times, and so we were ready to go with it. In fact, we had written a little special procedure because in some of the testing of the Gox vent arm over the last month or so, we didn't always get that retract indicator. So we put together a little procedure, and we put the procedure together figuring if we do that, we'll never get that failure. Well, of course, we got the failure. And so we had it knocked today. That was no big deal.
Leo Enright with Irish Television. Just a question about the RTLS waiver. Would you have done this if the shuttle was going to fly another mission? The reason I ask being that it was always my understanding that one of the concerns was that if you flew through precipitation that it would damage the tiles. And I mean, I'm just wondering, were you just making the calculation that, well, hey, we're not flying it again, so that sort of tile damage doesn't matter, or am I completely misunderstood?
No, that actually, so last mission type thing was not part of the consideration today. But you are right, flying through rain showers will damage the tile. And so the rule's not written because you damage tile and then therefore it's a turnaround maintenance issue. The rule is the damaging of that tile literally is taking energy out of your profile. You remember the shuttle's coming in as a glider without engines. Every last little bit of energy is well managed to make sure you make the runway. We knew today for the approach profiles with the wind that we had, the headwinds, the crosswinds, and the brake energy we would see, that we weren't going to have any energy problems. So losing a little bit of energy by flying through a rainstorm would be okay in today's situation. Just like you see with the forecasts, and we were talking pre-launch, no single forecast is the same. A 70% no-go one day is not the same as a 70% no-go the next day for different reasons. Those rain shower exception rules are the same thing. They're written for certain cases, but not every case. So we take a look at each one every time. It's one of the reasons we have people making these rules and not just a computer voting red or green to go or no-go. So did not come into consideration today at all.
Jim Siegel, Celebration Independent Newspaper. A question from Bob Cabana. You mentioned, Bob, some of the work being done on pad 39B. So looking forward now, when would you anticipate that work is going to be completed? What missions do you think are upcoming for that pad? And what about 39A? Is that going to kind of just stay where it is for a while for budget reasons, or what?
Well, we're obviously preparing to be able to launch a heavy lift rocket off that pad as soon as possible, with our goal being 2016. Now, how things work out in the budget process, we'll have to see. That doesn't look feasible right now, but we want the pad to be ready to go. So we'll progress ahead to have it ready as soon as we possibly can for accommodating NASA rocket launches off it. 39A, you're right, we don't have funding right now to move with it, so we're going to kind of put it in a caretaker status. Eventually, as we explore beyond our home planet, there are scenarios where we need 2 big launch pads to support 2 big rockets to go do some of the things we want to do. So down the road, we do see a need for that pad. In the meantime, we'll make sure that it's not in such a condition that we can't bring it back up when we need it.
Okay, over here, Ken Kramer.
Hi, Ken Kramer for Spaceflight Magazine. Mike Leinbach. Well, first of all of you, I just want to say congratulations and thank you. Okay. And you're wearing a very elegant medallion there. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about it.
This is a little flag that I gave the launch team today. It's a STS-135 prime launch team member, and I just wanted to give them something they could take with them and remember the good times, and so that's what this is about.
If I could just follow up with Bill Gerstenmaier, what is your reaction to these significant cuts to the proposed NASA budget by the House Appropriations Committee?
Again, I think it's too early to react to those cuts. Right? This is what we've seen from the House. We'll get some discussions with the Senate, and then eventually that'll get worked into what the NASA bill is. So I don't react to those. We understand what they mean. We understand the tough environment, and we'll work with that, and we'll watch the process go through, and we'll be prepared to execute with what we get when we finally get an answer from Congress.
Mark.
Mark Kirkman, Interspace News. Obviously, I don't ask feeling questions normally, but this time I would like to. And in particular, I'd like the perspective of the whole panel, but in particular the two mics. In my view, there's kind of no other place where you can, where you see the flight control teams and the launch teams the way when they're on their game. There's nothing like that to see them perform, whether it's simulations or a real launch. And I'd like you all to reflect on the fact that no matter what follow-on program you get, this animal is never going to exist before. This is the last time you're ever going to see that kind of execution, and just your thoughts on that.
We have grown into a very cohesive team throughout the whole shuttle program, not just the flight control team and the launch team, but all the processing team, the designers of the missions, the payload folks. It's a very, very cohesive group. I'm not sure we'll never see it again. We have grown into a very, very good organization, and it's taken years to do that. But that doesn't say it can't be done again. In fact, it will be done again. It has to be done again. What we have learned in the shuttle program, in part, is how to work between centers, and you split the work up. Certain organizations are responsible for certain things. You respect that. And you go about your business and work together as a team. And it seems very natural to me to work this way. And so I'm sure it will happen again. There's no doubt in my mind.
And for me, I'll steal a quote from Gene Kranz, who calls the control center a leadership laboratory. And it really is that. It trains people to be critical decision makers, communicators, and leaders. And so while we aren't going to be churning out from that laboratory for a little bit. We have a whole batch of folks that are going to go out and seed both commercial industry and private industry and the NASA team and go push the envelope and take what they've learned and the skills they know how to do now and go help us keep moving to the future and to our future goals. So from that standpoint, I feel good that we're going to go take this team that's excellent at what they do and go out there and save the world, so to speak. And we will be able to rebuild that team when the time comes, and we need that again. But yeah, in the short term, I know exactly what you mean, Mark. You've been there, so you recognize that it's in the short term, it's going to be something missed. That a chance to do that, every day.
Okay, Randy Siegel, WSTU Radio for Mike Lineback. Mike, you got the sash from Endeavour. You got the sash from Discovery. Did you get the one from Atlantis? And did you say anything special to the team after it was all over, realizing the finality of where we're at?
It's almost like we planted you in the audience. There's Atlantis. What I said to the team today, there's been a tradition in American manned spaceflight that the launch director has bid the crews farewell, the astronauts farewell on launch day, traditionally with good luck and Godspeed. And the definition of Godspeed that I like the best is have a prosperous journey. And so at the end of my speech to the launch team today, I wish them from the bottom of my heart good luck and Godspeed.
Okay, Tarek.
Thank you. Tarek Malik with Space.com. I have, I think, one and a follow-up. First, for the two mics, I know that during a launch you're fairly busy, and maybe you get only a few seconds to get a look at the actual ascent. I'm just wondering, when you did get a peek, did it shine brighter at all? Did it feel like it lasted longer? Was there anything different that set it apart as it was happening and as you were looking?
No, Tarek, you put the words in my mouth for me. To me, it looked like it was lifting off in slow motion. I failed to apologize like I did the last time that we didn't give you a big enough view, but for a long enough time before we hit the cloud deck. But to me, it hit slow motion there for a good 10 seconds. It was very moving. It was very beautiful.
It was special today. I remember standing there after the vehicle went into the cloud deck. You could still see the smoke from the SRBs and the main engines in the first stage, and it seemed like that cloud plume just was growing and just hovering and slowly drifting north. And Bill Dowdell, a good friend of mine, the payload launch manager, I believe I'm right when I say we put our arms around each other and just looked at it and said, we will never see that again. It was a special moment.
Greg.
Oh, Tariq, I'm sorry.
I just had one more follow-up, sorry, for Bill. You mentioned the same message that Administrator Bolden did in his recording about the U.S. not pulling out of human spaceflight. I know there's been a lot of talk in the public about that perception because of the lack of an iconic vehicle like the Space Shuttle, and I'm just wondering how you perceive the challenge to kind of combat that perception in the months and years ahead before the gap is complete.
I think one piece that we forget is we've created this unbelievable facility in space, this 16-partner, 900,000-pound research facility in space. And we've got to really maximize the way we talk about that and the way we use that facility. You know, we've got a chance to do unbelievable research in a facility that we've never been able to do. This is a unique period in our lives to get that done. So we need to do our level best to take advantage of that. And then when you talk about the flight teams, there's still a flight team on the ISS side that's managing 17 launches to that vehicle every year. They're juggling cargo manifests, they're juggling research manifests. We're looking at establishing a new nonprofit organization to manage the national lab portion of that ISS. So we are still in space and we are still moving forward with the ISS. You're seeing commercial cargo come online later this fall and next spring. You'll see commercial crew come after that. So we're ready to keep going, and we're going to springboard off of what the shuttle has done and move the next 50 years and make them just as bright as these last 30 have been for shuttle.
Greg.
Greg Dobbs from HDNet Television. And this is for the two mics, because you're the guys on this group who spend the most time around the shuttle. It's a more highly technical question than Tariq's first question, but did you choke up?
Yep, most definitely.
Yes.
You open it to follow up.
I'll choke up if I do.
Elaborate on why you personally choked up. You're engineers. You're always just, analyzing things at every stage of ascent.
To be honest, I choke up at every launch. This one I choked up before launch, which was the unusual thing for me. But again, as an engineer, as whatever, I can't see how anybody who comes down here and sees a shuttle launch doesn't choke up and just swell with pride at seeing that thing go. It just does it to you every time.
Okay, in the pink.
Marcia Smith, SpacePolicyOnline.com. To Bob Cabana, you talked about the future of the pads, but not about the VAB. Do the commercial guys want the VAB? Does NASA need the VAB? Does it get an uplift or does it get bulldozed?
No, absolutely. Yeah, I think there are folks who would shoot me if I thought about doing anything other than refurbishing it. Our plan is to refurbish Complex 39 to make it a multi-user spaceport, and that includes utilizing the VAB and the other facilities that are out there. We're partnering with Space Florida and commercial companies through Space Act agreements and use agreements to try and bring commercial work here. But we most definitely need that VAB for the heavy lift rocket that we're going to build to support launches out of Complex 39 that take us beyond Earth. So absolutely, we're going to continue to make it a viable part of the future, and that includes some refurbishment. So we're making the most of the downtime, the transition between programs. Fortunately, we only needed one shuttle pad, so we were able to get a jump start on 39B to start transitioning it to the future. And we need a little bit of downtime in order to make the modifications and transition from one program to the next, and that's what we're doing right now.
Yeah, go ahead, Marcia.
I won't ask you how much it's going to cost, but will the government have to bear all those costs, or will those be shared with the commercial sector?
If the commercial companies are going to use it, they're going to have to pay to use it.
Irene.
Thanks. Irene Klotz with Reuters, for anybody who'd care to take this. You all inherited a vehicle that was ultimately proved far more complicated and labor-intensive to work on, and one of the goals that the shuttle program didn't meet was this low-cost, reusability, reliability. I guess I'm just wondering why you think it took 30 years for the shuttle program to get to the point where it would stand down and give perhaps another operator, commercial or some other version of government, an opportunity to develop something that would actually meet one of those goals that the shuttle program was sold on.
Is that for me?
You can.
The shuttle program, we could not have built the space station without the space shuttle. And, it is a phenomenal achievement on orbit right now. So, I look back on what the shuttle's done in 30 years. The Hubble Space Telescope, Magellan, Ulysses, Galileo, the probes, it is, the shuttle opened up space. When you look back on the Apollo and prior, look at the makeup of the astronaut corps and look at it today. Look at the diversity within the astronaut corps. Look at the multi-nations that have flown to space on the space shuttle and what it's done. I don't think it ended early. I think it totally fulfilled what it was meant to do. Did it deliver on the costs that some people said? No. But did it achieve something that was not achievable by any other country or any other vehicle? Absolutely. So I think it's done a phenomenal job.
The green. Oh, go ahead.
Do you think that the commercial companies are going to have an easier time of developing vehicles that non-astronauts can fly in? I guess is what I was kind of alluding to with a simpler design.
Well, yes, but they're not going to be able to do what the shuttle did. The shuttle was designed to carry large payloads to orbit, to carry large crews to orbit, to stay on orbit for a long time, to service vehicles in space. A capsule is designed to go somewhere, drop somebody off, and bring them home. And is a capsule a lot easier to build? Absolutely. That's why we chose the Mercury capsule. NASA was working on lifting bodies when the space program was starting out because that was really the best way to go back and forth, to have some cross range, to land on a runway, but they needed to do it quickly and cheaply. And a capsule was the simplest, easiest way to do that, and it still is. And so we've been going back and forth to low Earth orbit for 50 years now. We ought to be able to define the requirements for somebody to build a capsule that allows them to take people up to the International Space Station and back, and not just the International Space Station, but, Boeing has a contract with Bigelow Aerospace. There are going to be other destinations. Commercial space is not just a government contract to the space station. It's got to be more than that.
And I think also the shuttle program gave a lot of information that's going to be tremendously valuable to these programs that are emerging and coming forward. A lot of our computational fluid dynamics, some of the things we understand about boundary layer transition on the vehicle, how the vehicle flies, those kind of things are still important to capsules, how life support systems are designed inside the capsule, how docking mechanisms work. All those things that we have really kind of proven and refined throughout the shuttle years, we can hand those off to the commercial companies and they can pick those up and move those in another direction. So I think there was a lot learned from the shuttle program that isn't immediately evident to you until you look behind the hardware and you look at the equations and some of the physical understandings of how we fly in space that actually have 100% application to this new activity we're heading off to.
In the green shirt.
Hi, Dave Mosher with Wired.com. So you guys have a mission in space now, and this is for anybody who can best answer it. What is going to be a really key moment up there, aside from getting the astronauts safely on the ground? What's going to be sort of tensest moment, the main objective that you want to get done before you come home?
Well, I think first of all, there's a lot of just logistics activity, and that's just moving cargo from the multi-purpose logistics module into the space station. This is the heaviest MPLM multi-purpose logistics module we've flown, so it is really packed full. So there's going to be just a big kind of logistics activity of moving that activity from the module. Then also space station is getting pretty crowded. There's a lot of things up there that are stored that need to come back. This is a unique time to bring unique components back, so you'll see us fill the MPLM up. That's why we really would like to have the extra day on orbit. We also have a pump module that's failed on the outside of space station. It failed a little bit earlier than our analysis has shown. We would like to return that pump module to understand why it failed so we can improve the next generation. And then we have another experiment that's going up. It's a refueling experiment that will sit on the outside of station, and this fall we'll be able to use the Canadian dexterous robot to actually service to do a mock demonstration of servicing a satellite that was never meant to be serviced. So it has on the outside of it an interface that looks just like a satellite that's in geosynchronous orbit. We've designed unique tools for it, very much like we designed unique tools for the Hubble servicing mission, but now this robot will use these unique tools. It will cut the blanket away, it will remove a panel, it will remove lock wire, remove a cap, and then actually demonstrate fluid transfer between two tanks on board. So it's going to take us now from the spacewalk generation to start showing us what we can do in terms of robotic activities on board space station.
Okay, back on the other side of the room.
Yes, hi, Matt Pavlidich from the Radio Network New Zealand. Thank you, gentlemen, for today. I think it'll be with us the rest of our lives. The initial ascent of Atlantis did look, to me anyway, slightly slow, like she was strutting perhaps. A question and a follow-up for Bob Cabana. Pad 39A, as has been mentioned, is in the past, the present and the future going to be a working launch pad, but are there any plans to have any significant extra commemoration plaques, what have you, for that pad in the coming future? And also, when Atlantis returns home, are there any special ceremonies that you have up your sleeve that you perhaps cannot tell us about yet?
Well, actually, I'm working with the Shuttle program to come up with some commemorative plaques to put in some various places, both at the Shuttle landing facility and at the launch pad. So we'll have something to commemorate the history of those pads as well as the landings at the SLF. And we've got a couple of ceremonies coming up after landing, something special for the KSC team right here participating in the landing, post-landing. But we're going to have a big celebration, and I can't remember the date right now, but it's going to be out at our visitor center, and it's going to celebrate the entire Shuttle program. And it's going to be open to easy access to all the retirees, the folks that have been a key part of this program for the last 30 years, so we can really celebrate the significance of what Shuttle has accomplished. And that's going to be on the 13th of August.
Andy Cox with the Weather Channel. It seemed today like the weather gods kind of conspired to let both the teams kind of show their mettle. You guys talked about the SMG working the RTLS stuff and 45th working the range stuff here. I wonder if you guys could maybe speak to the bigger picture of what the weather teams have meant just throughout the course of the program, the support they've given.
Yeah, it's amazing, and I'll let Mike add in too, because he works with Kathy a lot in the 45th, and we're only singling out Kathy because she's the spokesman for that team usually. But the SMG guys, we're talking about the future and looking ahead. It's amazing when you work down here how much we need the daily weather forecasts for every operation we do. We're outside at the pad. We're moving hardware back and forth. There's cargo coming in at the SLF. We need weather forecasting on a daily basis. And in fact, Mike has a daily weather call where we tag up and see what's coming. And so it's played an integral part of the Space Shuttle program and the space program. And it's really built up an unbelievable capability. I was just explaining to a few folks the other day, not too long ago we had flight rules in place that talked about triggered lightning. We learned that lesson the hard way through some of our partners over on the Air Force side, where they had an event with a triggered lightning that took out an Atlas, and a bunch of new rules came in place to talk about what the limits are. And we have field mills on the ground that measure voltages from lightning and kind of help tell you whether you're going to get triggered lightning or an impending lightning strike. But we didn't know what was really happening at altitude. And so combination with the Weather Service, the Air Force, NASA, and NOAA, we flew a project to basically fly airborne field mills. We used to have a rule that any attached cumulus cloud, if it had lightning in it, if it was attached, you'd be no-go. So we could have a cloud deck that stretched over the Gulf of Mexico with lightning out near the middle of Mexico, and we'd be no-go here for that. And we learned through these rules that it's probably about, and I can't remember the numbers exactly, but it's a 20 to 30 mile type of radius effect. And so advancing the state of the art there really, really paid off. And I think we got that because we had a dedicated team focused on dedicated weather in certain areas of the country. You learn so much when you look at weather in one spot that closely. And so I really hope that that's seeded itself throughout the rest of the country in weather forecasting and weather service too, not just for the shuttle program. But it's an unbelievable team. We could not do what we do without them.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I do have a daily weather call with Kathy Winters, the launch weather officer. And as Mike says, she's just a spokesman for a large group of people over the 45th. Different things come into play on daily processing versus launch. Different things come into play when we're talking about tropical systems. We work very closely with the National Hurricane Center when we have a tropical system threatening us. We've had criteria to roll the shuttle off the launch pad to get back into the VAB to protect it. And we've done that in the past. Weather here in Central Florida, lightning capital of the world, right? There's a group of people, the lightning launch commit criteria group. It's a group of PhDs, been together for over 25 years. And through those years and the studies they've done, like the airborne field mill that Mike mentioned, we've been able to relax our rules, but yet stay perfectly safe. And so we're constantly challenging the weather folks because we have an operation to perform, but we need to do it safely. And so it's a balance between those two competing interests. Weather in Central Florida is a very, very interesting phenomenon, and you saw it today. It could have easily turned very, very sour, and we wouldn't be talking to you right now. So a little bit of luck never hurts. But the relationship we have with the 45th and SMG and the other folks that support them is just outstanding. All right, we have time for unfortunately only 3 more questions, so we'll take one here, then Todd Halverson and Ralph Vardabadian from the LA Times.
Thank you. Jackie Goddard for the Times of London. Over the last couple of years, and right up to last week really, we've seen certain harsh criticism spelled out by some pretty heavyweight NASA veterans, Neil Armstrong, Chris Kraft, Gene Kranz, Gene Cernan, the letter last week to Charlie Bolden. How, if NASA can't convince some of its own finest, how do you think NASA will move forward to convince the public that NASA is still an agency that knows where it's going, what it's doing, and that it's worth doing?
Well, I'll start, and I'm going to let the head of human spaceflight at NASA add a little bit more to it. But I think as it becomes clearer and we announce the specific design of the rocket that we are building and how we are going to use it and why we chose that design, I think that's going to help tremendously in educating and helping folks understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
And I think also there's a piece of it that, we've got a lot of detailed plans that we've been working, in-house quietly with technical teams, really building a pretty strong strategy of how we go forward. And they captured a vision of NASA that was in the past with a different set of teams, and they haven't had the privilege of being brought in and understanding all the details that the technical experts are working on a day-to-day basis. So we'll reach out to them and make sure that we get the briefings to them and they can understand what we're doing. We'll listen to their opinions. We'll see what makes sense, see if we missed something. I think when I grew up under those folks you mentioned, those are my teachers. Those are my mentors. I lived in Houston with them. I consider all of them truly my mentors. So I think I've incorporated everything that they bring to us in terms of concerns. But I think we owe them to show them technically what we've done and how we're prepared to go address these issues that they raise. And I think after they see that, I think they'll come to an understanding of where we're heading. They may not particularly like it because they want to push in a further direction. They know what this team is capable of. They see what we can go do, and they want us to do even more. So they are pushing us as hard as they can on the outside. So a piece of that is healthy, too, to have a good, strong debate that we can keep pushing and keep trying to do more. And we are, this team is really ready to execute whatever this nation wants this team to go do. This team can go execute.
Todd Halverson.
Todd Halverson of Florida Today for Bill or maybe Mike Moses. With the end of the shuttle program and maybe more specifically the end of ISS assembly, I'm wondering if either of you see this as an end of a golden era in spacewalking.
I don't see it really as an end. I see it really as it's a transition, right? And unfortunately sometimes we can't do, we say we can multitask, right, as a people, but sometimes we can't multitask as well as we think we can. You feel like you're multitasking, but are you really as efficient as you were, or are you just doing 3 things that actually take you longer than if you would have done those 3 things individually, right? So in a way, we had to really quit assembly to really get focused on this research pace and to get this activity started. And we've got a nice window. We've got a nice 9-year window where we can really concentrate on this space research. And then that shows that there's potentially an economic market. There's now potentially a commercial application for space that's not government driven. So then there's a unique window here where now it's not only individual governments pushing us into space, but now there's a real commercial pull towards space. And that can really springboard us and move us in big directions. So I don't see this necessarily as an end, but I see this as a transition into another era. And at the same time we're going to be doing the ISS research, we're going to be building Golden and the heavy lift launch vehicle, the capsule we talked about, the Orion MPCV, that's going to allow us to get beyond low Earth orbit, to go push those boundaries, to really challenge us as a human race to go out and explore with humans to new destinations. So I don't see this as an end of the golden era. I see this as a chance we can leverage off of what we've got now and really push it in new directions. And it's up to us to make sure we explain as best we can to the broader community, the non-space folks, why we are doing what we are doing. Why have we dedicated our lives to this? Why are we doing all the activities we have done? We need to convey to them that excitement in this small window so they can get excited with us and then move with us into this next phase of spaceflight.
Ralph.
Thank you. Ralph Artabady in LA Times. The last question is, a lot of federal agencies have gone through ends of eras of very technically sophisticated programs and have worried about the loss and atrophy of the know-how and knowledge that extended back decades. And I was just wondering, and they've gone through processes of formally documenting that technology and knowledge, and I'm just wondering now at the end of the shuttle era whether you're concerned about preserving and being able to tap all of the knowledge, the manufacturing art, the operational knowledge that you bring to this table, and how you're doing it and whether you're concerned about it. Thank you.
We have a pretty extensive lessons learned program where we try to document exactly what we've done. We do it through video archives. We have a database that's searchable. We have all kinds of multimedia activities to try to capture the knowledge. But then I think another really effective way to transfer that knowledge is to move some of the people from one activity or one program to that next program, so they can take the actual lessons that they have learned and applied themselves, and they get to then go apply it to the new program. If you look at our history, a lot of the ISS team came from the shuttle program. So they got to take all those hard lessons they learned in the shuttle program that are really internal lessons now that you're not going to read in a book or you don't have to search in a database, and they can actually apply them in the next application. So as we do the new designs of these launch pads, we do the new designs of the new launch vehicles, we're going to try to capture and move people that have experience in the shuttle world into those areas so they can directly apply the knowledge and the skills that they've learned in the shuttle program to the new activities going forward.
So you're not really concerned that you're going to have any atrophy or loss of knowledge?
I think I'm concerned. I mean, we need to watch out for that, right? But what I've described to you is the way we're going to try to prevent that. So I think it's naive to say we've got it well in hand, because this is a very difficult thing to do, to how you capture this knowledge and how you pass it on. We are trying our best with all the right experts and all these techniques I described to make sure we go do it. Time will tell how well we've done it, but I think it's critical for us to try to make that move and make sure we capture it. But it will not be easy for us to do.
Okay.
Can we see Mike's sash one more time?
They would like to see Mike's Atlantis sash one more time. And while, Mike, you're displaying that, I just wanted to let everyone know we're going to close today by replaying another launch of Atlantis on television for you. We also will be replaying a very special farewell tribute video from the closeout crew before they broke down the White Room for the last time. Then we'll turn things back to Mission Control in Houston for STS-135 continuous coverage. You can keep up with the entire mission at www.nasa.gov/shuttle. Now we'll roll video. Thank you very much.
Well, good answers.
8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. The final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Roger, roll, Miss Planet. Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of the sentimental journey into history. 24 seconds into the flight.
Mit 4 Minuten Verspätung startete heute um 17:30 Uhr von Cape Canaveral aus das letzte Mal ein US-Space Shuttle ins Weltall. Die Raumfähre Atlantis soll 4 Astronauten zur internationalen Raumstation ISS bringen. Danach legen die USA die bemannte Raumfahrt wegen zu hoher Kosten erstmal auf Eis. Im und rund um den Weltraumbahnhof verlieren jetzt viele Menschen ihre Jobs. Aus den USA David Oertling.
2, 1, 0 and lift off.
Amerikas Traum soll weitergehen, auch wenn eine Ära zu Ende ist. Lift-off für die letzte Shuttle-Mission heute in Cape Canaveral. Zum letzten Mal erschüttert der ohrenbetäubende Lärm des startenden Shuttles die Küste Floridas.
Eine Ära geht hier zu Ende und Millionen Menschen schauen zu, hier auf dem Kennedy Space Center, aber auch auf den Stränden drumherum, und sie tun das mit Wehmut, denn sie wissen, es muss Jahre dauern, bis es hier von der NASA wieder bemannte Raumfahrt geben wird.
30 Jahre lang war das Shuttle-Programm der ganze Stolz der USA. Mit dem Start der ersten Mission 1981 wurde möglich, was bis dahin undenkbar erschien. Das Shuttle brachte nicht nur tonnenschwere Satelliten ins All, es brachte auch Astronauten und Ausrüstung wieder zurück zur Erde. Der Aufbau der internationalen Raumstation ISS oder die faszinierenden Bilder des Weltraumteleskops Hubble. Ohne das Shuttle hätte es sie nie gegeben. Es bleiben aber auch die Erinnerungen an die beiden großen Tragödien des Programms. 1986 explodierte die Raumfähre Challenger nur 72 Sekunden nach ihrem Start. Die ganze Welt sah damals zu, genau wie nur Jahre später, als 2003 die Raumfähre Columbia beim Wiedereintritt in die Erdatmosphäre zerbrach und verglühte. Schon damals hatten viele hier in der Region rund um das Space Center in Cape Canaveral Angst, das Shuttle-Programm könnte vor dem Ausstehen. Jetzt ist klar, tausende Menschen werden hier ihren Job verlieren. Jahrzehntelang hat man ganz gut vom Shuttle-Tourismus und der NASA gelebt, aber damit ist es jetzt erstmal vorbei. Hier war jedes Mal so viel los, dass wir nicht hinterherkamen, aber die Zeiten sind vorbei. 12 Tage sollen die 4 Crewmitglieder der Atlantis im All bleiben. Und bei allem Wehmut über das Ende der Shuttle-Ära liegt auch ein wenig Hoffnung in der Luft. Spätestens 2035 wollen die USA Menschen zum Mars und wieder zurückfliegen. Mehr als eine Ankündigung, aber ist das bislang noch nicht.
Ende einer Ära, die US-Raumfähre Atlantis hat ihre letzte Reise ins Weltall angetreten.
Die Nachrichten des Tages, heute mit Matthias Vornoff.
Das erste Space Shuttle ins Weltall geschossen wurde, war das eine Revolution in der Raumfahrt. Heute geht diese Ära mit dem letzten Start eines Raumgleiters zu Ende. Das Shuttle sollte die Raumfahrt rentabel machen. In den riesigen Laderaum hätte ein ganzer Linienbus gepasst. Satelliten, Raumlabore und bis heute 355 Passagiere wurden so ins All transportiert. Auch das wissenschaftlich so wertvolle Weltraumteleskop Hubble und eine ganz banale Toilette für die Raumstation ISS. Das Space Shuttle ist wiederverwendbar. Nach dem Einsatz im All kann es wie ein Flugzeug auf der Erde landen. Das sollte Kosten sparen, hat es aber nicht, denn jeder Shuttleflug kostet $500 Milliarden. 135 Weltraumflüge haben die Shuttles zu Legenden der Raumfahrt gemacht. Hunderttausende Zuschauer wollten den letzten Start der Atlantis sehen.
Kurz vor dem Start, der Schock. Der Countdown bleibt stehen bei 31 Sekunden. Stoppt das Wetter ein letztes Mal das Shuttle? Nein, kurz darauf geht es weiter. Die Triebwerke zünden. Ein letztes Mal bebt auch noch kilometerweit entfernt die Erde. Es ist das Ende einer Epoche. Amerika nimmt Abschied vom Space Shuttle. Das ist das Ende einer Ära, die mein Leben 30 Jahre lang geprägt hat. Obwohl ich wirklich traurig bin, ist es immer noch aufregend. Ich mag das nicht, dass es zu Ende geht. Mein Traum ist es, auch mal Astronaut zu werden. Seit dem ersten Start vor mehr als 30 Jahren war das Space Shuttle das Aushängeschild der NASA. Ein Alleskönner. Große Nutzlast, Personentransport. Das Space Shuttle startet 135 Mal. Dennoch bleibt es hinter den Erwartungen zurück. Zu teuer, zu anfällig, immer wieder Rückschläge. 1986 explodiert die Challenger kurz nach dem Start. Ursache ist eine undichte Stelle in einer der 2 Feststoffraketen. Und wegen eines Defektes im Hitzeschild verglüht 2003 die Columbia beim Wiedereintritt in die Atmosphäre. Die NASA hält am Programm fest, vor allem um die internationale Raumstation ISS weiterzubauen, bis die Politik den teuren Shuttles den Geldhahn zudreht. Das letzte Space Shuttle ist gestartet. Nach mehr als 30 Jahren geht damit eine Ära zu Ende. Zurückbleiben ein paar Museumsstücke, jede Menge irdischer Weltraumschrott und ein Gefühl der Ernüchterung. Denn in all den Jahren ist es den Amerikanern nicht gelungen, einen Nachfolger zu entwickeln. Jetzt müssen die Russen aushelfen. Mit ihren zuverlässigen und günstigeren Sojus-Kapseln übernehmen sie die Transporte. Auf Dauer aber wollen die Amerikaner wieder die Führung am Himmel übernehmen. Mehrere private Firmen stehen in den Startlöchern.
Ja, und wenn Sie gerne noch mal nachschauen wollen, eine Bilderserie zur Geschichte der Space Shuttles finden Sie im Internet unter heute.de.
Heute war es soweit. Die Atlantis ist zum letzten Flug eines amerikanischen Space Shuttles abgehoben. Und es wird ein außergewöhnlich riskanter Flug werden. Denn anders als bei vorangegangenen Shuttle-Missionen steht ja im Notfall jetzt keine Rettungsfähre mehr bereit. Gibt es Probleme da oben, dann müsste die Mannschaft auf der ISS warten, bis sie peu à peu mit Sojus-Kapseln gerettet wird. Und laut Plan käme dann der letzte der Atlantis-Crew erst nach 335 Tagen zurück. Wir blicken mal auf 3 Jahrzehnte Shuttle-Geschichte mit ihren 135 Flügen. Und es sind besonders die Rückschläge, die im Gedächtnis bleiben.
28. Januar 1986. Der 25. Start eines Shuttle. An Bord eine Lehrerin. Krista McAuliffe war unter 11.000 Kollegen ausgewählt worden. Ihre Schüler sind da. Sie werden nie erfahren, welche Stunde Krista aus dem Orbit halten wollte. Houston befiehlt voller Schub. Alle 7 Besatzungsmitglieder sterben. Die Welt ist geschockt. Dabei beginnt die Geschichte der insgesamt 5 Shuttles unbeschwert. 1977 startet die Enterprise zum Testflug. Der Name Tribut an die erfolgreiche Fernsehserie. Zum ersten Mal fliegt ein Shuttle frei und gleitet im Landeanflug zur Erde zurück. Statt der Wegwerfraketen ist der Shuttle ein wiederverwendbarer Raumgleiter. In die Weltraumfahrt soll Routine einziehen, wie im zivilen Luftverkehr. Die NASA läutet eine neue Ära ein. 1985 starten 9 Shuttles in den Orbit. So viel wie in keinem Jahr später mehr. Dabei hätten es pro Jahr regelmäßig 60 werden sollen nach den Plänen der NASA. Fast 1/3 aller Missionen hat das Militär gebucht. Von ihrem Zweck erfährt die Öffentlichkeit nichts. Für Staunen sorgen die Bilder des blauen Planeten. Eine Erde ohne Grenzen und voller faszinierender Einblicke. Dass die Astronauten bei fast jedem der Flüge mit technischen Problemen zu kämpfen haben, das hört die NASA nicht gern. Live können die Zuschauer Weltraumalltag erleben. Reparatur und Zusammenbau von Satelliten und Experimente im All. Wie den ersten freien Raumspaziergang ohne Sicherheitsleine. Statt geplanter 10 kostet ein Flug $500 Millionen. Zwar retten Astronauten das fehlkonstruierte Weltraumteleskop Hubble, das dann Bilder von fernen Nebeln und Galaxien zur Erde schickt. Doch russische Wegwerfraketen sind viel billiger als ein Shuttle. Sie sichern den Nachschub für die internationale Raumstation. Der Shuttle steht unter keinem guten Stern. Am 16. Januar 2003 ist die Columbia startklar. An Bord 2 Frauen, 5 Männer. Sie gedenken der Challenger-Katastrophe auf den Tag genau vor 17 Jahren mit einer Schweigeminute. 4 Tage später bricht der Funkkontakt ab. Die Flugkontrolle ahnt noch nichts. In diesem Moment verglühen alle Astronauten. Ein Rückschlag, von dem sich das Shuttle-Programm nicht mehr erholen sollte. Noch während der Trauerfeier suchen Experten nach Gründen für das Desaster. Das Ergebnis wirft kein gutes Licht auf die Verantwortlichen. Wie die Challenger wurde die Columbia ein Opfer technischer Pannen und unglücklicher Umstände. Der allerletzte Shuttle im All ist die Atlantis. Nach 30 Jahren, die mit Visionen begannen und die den Weltraumflug zur Routine machten, nach Erfolgen und 2 schrecklichen Katastrophen gehen die Raumfähren aus alten Teil. Ein Nachfolger ist nicht in Sicht.
Ja, die Amerikaner überlassen das All jetzt erstmal den anderen. Und wenn die Amis auf die Raumstation wollen, nun dann müssen sie bei den Russen Flüge buchen. Das Ticket kostet da etwa 50 Millionen $ für jeden Astronauten. Aber im Vergleich zu den 210 Milliarden $, die man fürs Shuttle-Programm insgesamt ausgegeben hat, ist das ja ein echtes Schnäppchen.
You're at the international desk. I'm Fanula Sweeney. The headlines this hour. The US space shuttle Atlantis lifted off from Florida's east coast 2 hours ago. Crowds of close to 1 million people crowded the area within sight of the Kennedy Space Center to watch the launch in person. This is the last mission of America's 30-year shuttle program.
In der US-Raumfahrt ist eine Ära zu Ende gegangen. Zum letzten Mal ist ein Space Shuttle ins All gestartet. Die Atlantis hob heute vom Weltraumbahnhof Cape Canaveral ab, um Vorräte zur internationalen Raumstation ISS zu bringen. Nach ihrer Rückkehr kommt die Raumfähre ins Museum. Die NASA beendet damit ihr 30-jähriges Shuttle-Programm aus Kosten- und Sicherheitsgründen.
Aufgalopp von Amerikas letzten Raumfahrthelden. Fast noch hätte das Wetter das Finale durchkreuzt, aber dann lief alles nach Plan. Um 7:30 Ortszeit machten sich die 4 Astronauten auf den kurzen Weg zur Atlantis und langsam verzogen sich auch die düsteren Gewitterwolken. Es ist nicht gerade die bequemste Position, in die die Astronauten, 3 Männer und eine Frau, zum Start buxiert werden. 12 Tage werden sie im All bleiben, dann ist Schluss mit Amerikas Prestigeprojekt. Gewaltig donnernd hebt der Shuttle ab. Das ist die letzte Mission, sagt die Stimme aus dem Control Room, aber Amerikas Traum geht weiter. Nur wie? Darauf hat die NASA wenig Antworten. Hunderttausende sind rund um das Kennedy-Zentrum dabei. In die Begeisterung aber mischt sich Wehmut und Traurigkeit. Es ist mein erstes Mal, schluchzt sie, und mein letztes Mal, ich bin überwältigt. Es ist einfach nur traurig, dass jetzt alles zu Ende geht, sagt sie. Ich bin einfach nur stolz, Amerikaner zu sein. 135 Mal steuerten die NASA-Lastesel in den letzten 30 Jahren die Erdumlaufbahn an, gebaut, um den Weltraum zu erkunden und die All-Exkursionen billiger zu machen. 400 Kilometer von der Erde entfernt entstand die internationale Raumstation ISS. Ohne Space Shuttle gäbe es sie nicht. Eine Geschichte voller Siege, aber auch großer Niederlagen. Die NASA verlor in den 30 Jahren 2 ihrer Raumgleiter. 14 Astronauten starben. Vor allem aber blieb sie zu teuer.
Es ist das Ende einer Ära. Um auf die ISS zu gelangen, ist Amerika jetzt auf die Russen angewiesen, sozusagen per Anhalter durch die Galaxis. Private Firmen sollen später Ersatz schaffen und die NASA, die will tiefer ins All. Mission Mars. Nur wie und wann, mit welchem Geld? Es bleiben viele Fragezeichen.
Mehr dazu, unter anderem Bilder aus 30 Jahren Space Shuttle, gibt es bei uns im Internet unter tagesschau.de.
Heute Mittag der letzte Start eines Space Shuttles.
1, 0 and liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders
Damit
of the
endet ein Kapitel Raumfahrt, das mit großen Hoffnungen begonnen hatte. Es sollte Schluss sein mit dem Wahnsinn des Wettrennens zum Mond. Da wurden Raketen, deren Größe man am Kölner Dom messen musste, in einem einzigen Flug verbraucht. Eine winzige Kapsel war alles, was zurückkam zur Erde. Das Space Shuttle sollte dagegen ein Lastwagen in den Weltraum sein. Robust, zuverlässig und offen für die unterschiedlichsten Ladungen. Massengüter und Satelliten. Riesig Platz für alles, was in erdnaher Umlaufbahn gebraucht wird. Das Ding nur zum Größenvergleich. Ein Raumschiff, das landen kann und aufbrechen zum nächsten Flug. Im Prinzip hat das prima funktioniert. Aber das Raumtransportsystem, wie das Shuttle offiziell heißt, blieb technisch kapriziös, gefährlich und so teuer, dass Amerika es sich nicht mehr leisten will. Zeit für einen Abgesang von Christoph Röckerath, dem Glückspilz, der bei dem historischen letzten Start heute dabei sein durfte.
Spuren im Sand. Die Reste eines hölzernen Trainingsmoduls des Space Shuttle. Trotzig flimmert der Name durch die Hitze. Resolution, Entschlossenheit. Weggeworfen im Sumpf vor den Toren des Weltraumhafens von Florida. Zukunft von gestern. Das Space Shuttle ist bald Geschichte. Ein schwerer Schlag für die Region. Tausende haben bereits ihre Arbeit verloren, seit die Regierung das Aus fürs Shuttle verfügt hat. Die Space Coast, die Weltraumküste Floridas, in der Sinnkrise. Untrennbar mit der Geschichte des Space Shuttle verbunden, seit 30 Jahren dreht sich die Druckpresse. Zu jeder Mission der Raumfähre ein T-Shirt in limitierter Auflage. Ein gutes Geschäft, die Lebensgrundlage von Brenda Mulberry. Damit ist es jetzt vorbei. Ihr Souvenirladen ist angewiesen auf Shuttle-Touristen. Erst recht, seit die NASA vor ein paar Wochen ihren Mann Gary, einen Shuttle-Ingenieur der ersten Stunde, kurzfristig gefeuert hat, wie so viele. Es ist, als ob das ganze Leben vor deinen Augen vorbeizieht. Der Shuttle ist Teil von mir, seit ich aus der Uni raus bin. Ich bin jetzt 52, damals war ich 21. Das ist mein halbes Leben. Beim Shuttle-Programm hatten wir das Gefühl, jeden Tag ein wenig Geschichte zu schreiben. All die aufregenden Dinge, die das Shuttle gemacht hat. Jetzt hilft Gary seiner Frau im Laden beim Tüten einpacken. Shuttle-Ingenieure werden nicht mehr gebraucht. Tausende ehemalige NASA-Techniker suchen einen neuen Job. Nur wenige haben Glück. Eine Stunde südlich vom Weltraumhafen hat ein brasilianischer Flugzeugbauer ein Werk eröffnet. Auf jeden Platz hier kommen hunderte Bewerber. Wer hier arbeitet, hat es geschafft, doch der Schmerz über das Shuttle aus bleibt. Das war, als ob ein Familienmitglied sterben würde. Du wusstest zwar, dass es passieren würde, aber du hast es immer verdrängt. Als es dann passierte, war es ein Schock. Eine Alternative gibt es noch nicht zum Space Shuttle. Stattdessen karrt die NASA die versammelte Weltpresse zu einer alten Raketenrampe in einer entfernten Ecke des Weltraumbahnhofs. Von hier sollen dereinst selbst entwickelte Raketen des privaten Unternehmens SpaceX starten. Ich gebe zu, das hier ist eine Raketenrampe für Arme. Sie ist etwas schlicht. Wir haben hier nicht viel Zeugs. Trotzdem soll von dort die Rakete vom Typ Falcon 9, die in der Halle dahinter liegt, problemlos starten können. Im Dezember hat sie erfolgreich eine wiederverwendbare Kapsel ins All geschossen. So sieht die Zukunft der US-Raumfahrt aus. Erst aber kommt der Abschied. Der letzte Arbeitstag bricht an für die letzten verbliebenen Shuttle-Ingenieure. Kurz vor dem Start, Zeit, Lebewohl zu sagen. Danke, dass wir 30 Jahre lang unseren Space Shuttles dienen durften. Der nächste schreibt: Alles Gute, Atlantis. Noch einmal bebt die Erde. Noch einmal zeigt uns das Shuttle mit aller Kraft, warum es so viele Jahre lang ein ganzes Land in seinen Bann ziehen konnte.
Amerika verfolgt weiter seinen Traum im All, sagte der NASA-Sprecher, als das Shuttle donnernd in den Himmel raste. Solche patriotischen Sätze sind Tradition bei den Starts. Aber was ist Tradition ohne Zuversicht und ohne Plan? Das war ein traurig schöner Tag für Freunde der Raumfahrt.
Für dich, ich weiß es wohl.
Hier ist das erste deutsche Fernsehen mit den Tagesthemen.
Guten Abend, meine Damen und Herren. Die amerikanische Raumfahrt erlebte heute ihren vorerst letzten Höhenflug. Unsere Tagesthemen. Abschied vom All, letzte Reise des Space Shuttle. Der Weltraum, unendliche Weiten. Wir schreiben das Jahr 2011. Das ist das letzte Abenteuer der amerikanischen Space Shuttles, die Jahrzehnte unterwegs waren, um den Weltraum zu erforschen. Nach 135 Flügen, 2 Katastrophen und vor allem nach mehr als 200 Milliarden $ ist jetzt Schluss. Da Präsident Obama demnächst möglicherweise nur noch sein Haushalt um die Ohren fliegt, werden die USA vorerst nicht mehr in Galaxien vordringen, die noch nie zuvor ein Mensch gesehen hat. Es sei denn, sie suchen sich neue Mitfluggelegenheiten. Über den Abschied vom Weltraum Hanni Hüsch.
Aufgalopp von Amerikas letzten Raumfahrthelden. Fast noch hätte das Wetter das Finale durchkreuzt, aber dann lief alles nach Plan. Um 7:30 Ortszeit machten sich die 4 Astronauten auf den kurzen Weg zur Atlantis und langsam verzogen sich auch die düsteren Gewitterwolken. Es ist nicht gerade die bequemste Position, in die die Astronauten, 3 Männer und eine Frau, zum Start buxiert werden. 12 Tage werden sie im All bleiben, dann ist Schluss mit Amerikas Prestigeprojekt. Gewaltig donnernd hebt der Shuttle ab. Das ist die letzte Mission, sagt die Stimme aus dem Control Room, aber Amerikas Traum geht weiter. Nur wie? Darauf hat die NASA wenig Antworten. Hunderttausende sind rund um das Kennedy-Zentrum dabei. In die Begeisterung aber mischt sich Wehmut und Traurigkeit. Es ist mein erstes Mal, schluchzt sie, und mein letztes Mal, ich bin überwältigt. Es ist einfach nur traurig, dass jetzt alles zu Ende geht, sagt sie. Ich bin einfach nur stolz, Amerikaner zu sein. 135 Mal steuerten die NASA-Lastesel in den letzten 30 Jahren die Erdumlaufbahn an, gebaut, um den Weltraum zu erkunden und die Allexkursionen billiger zu machen. 400 Kilometer von der Erde entfernt entstand die internationale Raumstation ISS. Ohne Space Shuttle gäbe es sie nicht. Eine Geschichte voll Siege, aber auch großer Niederlagen. Die NASA verlor in den 30 Jahren 2 ihrer Raumgleiter, 14 Astronauten starben, vor allem aber blieb sie zu teuer.
This is it. This is the last one. You know, we're looking at the flight deck now. Some live pictures. Sandy Magnus is there. We saw her. Oh, that was her hair there floating by a minute ago. So the astronauts are in orbit. They're chasing down the International Space Station rendezvous Sunday morning with the space station, and then really what begins the docking, and then the 12-day mission that will end back here at the Kennedy Space Center on the 20th or 21st of the month. Becky?
All right. So I know you've got a short report for us this evening, because it didn't all go to plan necessarily, did it? At 31 seconds, T and 31 counting, it all sort of flattened out. I mean, I was holding my breath. I thought I was going to hold my breath forever.
Yeah, there was a little bit of a glitch there, but NASA worked it out. They stopped the count at 31, and then, you know, right away they were able to work through the problem. Turned out not to be a problem at all. They picked the count up with literally, you know, just minutes to go before they would have run out of time in the launch window, and they got Atlantis off the ground. And so it was a heart stopper, that's for sure.
All right,
Becky?
let's take a look. I'm going to let John go. I want to take a look at John's report that he filed just earlier on what is, of course, an historic moment for the space program in the US. Let's take a look at this.
From the beginning, it was a marvelous machine, releasing from its cargo bay deep space probes like Ulysses that went to Jupiter. Astronauts ventured out untethered.
The trip to Solar Max estimated to take 10 minutes.
To capture and retrieve failed satellites, dead in space. Dangerous feats unheard of before Shuttle.
Houston, I think we got a satellite.
The great observatory Hubble dazzles with breathtaking images of the universe and its ability to see galaxies born nearly at the dawn of time.
Hubble has arrived on board Atlantis with the arm.
Hubble was launched, repaired, and serviced from Shuttle. Every major building block of the football field-long space station was carried up and assembled from Shuttle. Before becoming NASA's head man, Charlie Bolden was an astronaut. He flew 4 shuttle flights, including the Hubble launch.
I defy anybody, and I will argue with my Apollo comrades. The accomplishments, the achievements, the record of performance, the spin-offs, the capabilities that have been developed, what we did in Shuttle over 30 years dwarf what was done in the Apollo era.
We can build spacecraft, we can build hardware, we can build boosters, but there's no goal, there's no mission. We are wandering in the desert in space today, period.
So why now? Why call it quits now? From the time of its inception 40 years ago until the shuttles are retired, the program will have cost the American taxpayers just shy of $115 billion. That's less than $4 billion a year. A drop, if that, in the federal budget. Still, the problem is money.
There's just not enough money in NASA to continue the existing programs and start a new program at the same time.
Was it time?
Yes, it was time, and it has been time for some time to phase out of shuttle and go back to exploration.
Whether you hated it or hailed it, whether you felt it a waste or worth it, the shuttle was an iconic flying machine that symbolized America's inspiration and ingenuity.
Roger, roll.
Remarkable stuff. And as you were watching John's report there on the right-hand side of your screens, you were seeing live pictures from the final shuttle in the US Space Orbiter program, which lifted off around about 11:30 this morning. And there come those pictures once again, live pictures, as Atlantis makes its way towards the International Space Station. I think John said docking Sunday, and there for, what is it, 12 days or so. NASA TV aboard the shuttle Atlantis. Quite remarkable stuff, isn't it? All right. Get you some other pictures from the shuttle now. Take a look at this. For each mission, there's a huge crew of people that strap in the astronauts and make sure that everything is A-OK for launch. This is a touching personal thank you from those who made the historic program possible. And you can see they're appearing one at a time with their own message of thanks. An era ends, so who will pick up where the US has left off? Next up is a new space race emerging. We're going to take a look at some of the countries well on the way to filling the void. Stay with us. Well, the final mission is underway. Atlantis blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center just about 5 hours ago, about 11:30 local time, Florida time, the last flight in the space shuttle's 30-year history. It is the end of an era, of course, for the United States, but other countries are standing by to fill the void. We're going to take a spin around the globe on this story. Shortly, we're going to head to Moscow, where Matthew Chance will tell us how Russia fits in. From Mumbai, we'll hear from Malika Kapoor about India's controversial program. Going to begin for you, though, tonight in Beijing, where Stan Grant takes us inside China's space mission. Have a look at this.
I'm Stan Grant in Beijing. As we all know, China continues to make its mark here on Earth, but it also wants to be a superpower of the skies, and it is well on the way to completing its long march to the moon. It was 2003 when astronaut Yang Liwei went where no Chinese man had gone before, into space. When he returned, it was a scene of absolute pandemonium. Yang carried aloft an instant national hero. This was the culmination of a space program that dated back decades. This old footage from the 1970s showing China launching its first satellite into orbit. To a soundtrack of a Chinese revolutionary song, the successful rocket launch is hailed as a milestone. China's voice is finally heard in space, the narrator of this video says. How times have changed. As the United States retires its shuttle program, China is planning to launch a space station. From there, it will make the ultimate statement in the skies. Less than a decade ago, this man was China's first man into space. Its ultimate aim is to put a man on the moon. That would be the real test of China's power.
I'm Matthew Chance in Moscow, and behind me is a replica of the Buran spacecraft, the old Soviet Union's answer to the US Space Shuttle program. It only flew once back in 1988, never really achieving the success of its American counterpart. All the more ironic, then, that with the end of the shuttle program, US astronauts must now depend on Russian rockets, which are much cheaper to get them into space, at least until the next generation of NASA spacecraft comes online. But the truth is, these days, space travel is much more about economics and collaboration than competition. It may have started as a race between two superpowers, with the first satellites, the first human orbit, the first lunar landing, the first shuttle. But today, space travel is one of the few areas in which the United States and Russia truly cooperate.
I'm Malika Kapoor in Mumbai. Over the last 50 years, India has developed a rather ambitious and expansive space program. It takes great pride in saying that it's self-reliant. India can design, develop, build, and launch its own satellites from its own soil without the help of any other country. It's launched a number of satellites over the years, and perhaps the highlight of its accomplishments in its space program so far has been the launch of Chandrayaan in October 2008, an unmanned mission to the moon. Since then, India has increased its budget for its space program, which is now around $1 billion a year. Of course, there are plenty of people in India who wonder why India is spending so much money on its space program, and they say that this money could be better spent on helping the common man. They want to see this money used to help people who are hungry. There are millions of people who go hungry in India every day. They want to see this money spent on better infrastructure, on food, on clothing, on shelter. Now, those who support the space program have this comeback. They say that advances in space technology will help everyone and that it'll help India deliver better infrastructure, better resources, better natural disaster management, and also better management of its natural resources.
Malika Kapoor. In Mumbai, for you, most of those programs, I think it's fair to say, probably wouldn't have been around if it hadn't been for the US Space Orbiter program, which has been pioneering in so many ways. And our next guest is among those whose name the shuttles have helped cement in history. In 1995, Bernard Harris became the first African-American to walk in space. The former NASA astronaut joins me now from Indianapolis. What do people say when you say, I'm an astronaut?
Well, you know, sometimes, depending on the environment, they don't believe me. And then, of course, I have to share with them, once they believe me, what it's like to travel in space, and then they are really excited.
What a dream. OK, listen, you watched today at 31 seconds and counting, everything stopped, and they said there'd been some sort of mechanical failure. Talk us through what the astronauts in the Atlantis were going through.
Well, as you saw today, we usually go in about 2 to 3 hours before liftoff. So there's a lot of time to just sit on your back, thinking about, you know, contemplating what's going to happen in the next few minutes. And at that 31 seconds, a few heart rates went up to not because of any issue that they were concerned about being scared, but it's more that I may not launch today. At least that's the way it was for me.
Were you holding your breath?
Well, you know, I described the ascent ride. You know, we have first stage when you're on the solid rocket motors, which lasts about 2 minutes. And then you have the second stage that goes on into orbit, only taking 8.5 minutes to get there. And I tell people I took my first breath when the main engines lit, and I took my second breath when we got off the solid rocket motors.
Goodness, you must be you'd work well underwater as well as in space. Listen, this is the end of the program as we know it. It will be a very sad day for NASA, but is it the right thing?
I believe it's the right thing to do. The shuttle has been around for over 30 years now. It has served its purpose, and just like all things, there comes a time in which you need to move on. And I think that time has come. I think the next era for us is going to be exciting as we get private industry more involved in the space program, and you have in that new innovation, new ideas about how vehicles are developed and built and how you get people into low Earth orbit. So I'm excited.
Good stuff. We are too. Bernard, we thank you very much indeed for joining us. Going to have to take an advertising break very shortly. Bernard Harris, your astronaut this evening. Well, your parting shots today, 134 launches in 134 seconds. Not counting today's takeoff. That is how many times NASA's shuttles, Columbia, Challenger, Endeavour, Discovery and Atlantis have blasted off from the Kennedy Space Center. And here at CNN, we've made it a bit easier for you and crammed those memorable launches into 134 seconds. We haven't quite got time to show you it all, but you can check it out at CNN.com. We're going to do as much as we can before this short break.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
We have engine start.
Start. 4, 3, 2, 1.
And we have liftoff.
And the history's largest astronaut crew is on its way.
Space Lab 2.
Shuttle has cleared the tower.
Roll program initiated. It's in controlling now. Roger, roll, Challenger.
Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.
liftoff of Columbia on the first dedicated medical research flight. 6-man crew on a Department of Defense flight.
Let's climb to 28.5 degree inclination orbit. Atlantis speed now 500 miles an hour.
Maximum dynamic pressure on the vehicle in the lower atmosphere.
Heading engines at 100%. Well, the vehicle's rate of speed will virtually triple.
Flight controllers standing by for burnout and jettison of the twin solid rockets. 3 main engines, second stage.
Columbia Houston, performance nominal.
On a heads down position, on course.
Space Shuttle Columbia with the Microgravity Science Laboratory.
Starts at about 1G vertical acceleration.
All systems on board are continuing to perform well.
Good solid rocket booster separation. Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia, the international research mission finally underway.
And liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery, beginning America's new journey.
Atlantis begins its penultimate journey to shore up the International Space Station.
Final liftoff of Discovery.
Houston, Endeavour, all program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.